The Nats Chat end-of-season podcast party is Friday, October 2nd from 7 to 9 p.m. at Walters, the official bar of the Nats Chat podcast. Al, Tim, and I will all be there, ready to hear your opinions about Giovanni Cruz's velo, Jorbit Bibas's playing time, and C.J. Abrams' move to second base, if it's actually happened by then. More info to come as the date approaches, and again, that's Friday, October 2nd from 7 to 9 p.m. at Walters.
The 2-2 pitch. Swing a long drive, left center field. Lyle going back to the warning track, climbing the wall, and it's gone. A home run for Carrick, his sixth, and the Rockies have two two-run homers and a 4-1 lead. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Here's the pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out on the splitter. There's the first big league strikeout for Luis Perales. He fans Moniak on a 2-2 splitter to strand a pair of base runners. Welcome to the big leagues, Luis Perales.
2-1 offering. Swing and a long drive, left center field deep. Young going back, going. It's gone into the red seats. And Connor Norby has hit a grand slam. Oh my. And that breaks this game wide open. 8-1 Colorado.
Here's the set, and with hang time, it's on the way, and a ground ball toward the middle. Nunez dives, it's by him for a base hit. Moniak scores. Norby will come in and score. The throw in toward third as Johnston will stop at second. 2 more for the Rockies, and it's 13-1.
And welcome to Nats Chat. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. I'm joined by Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. He is at Nationals Park. Just how bad are things going to get for the Nats this season? They now are just 7-20 over their last 27 games. A 13-1 loss to the Colorado Rockies at Nationals Park on Wednesday evening in Game 3 of a 4-game series. So the Nats now have gone from 55-53 to 62-73. The run differential now is at +6. The Nats are in danger of having a negative run differential. And this loss on Wednesday evening happened against a Rockies team that now is a National League worst 52-81 with a National League worst run differential of -132. The Nats on Wednesday evening got humiliated at home against the worst team in the NL, prompting Nats manager Blake Butera during his postgame press conference to express big-time frustration with how his team played, questioning the effort of his team.
We're pretty flat. I thought we didn't play as hard as we normally do.
We have a lot to get into. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Table to Mat, which you can count on for all of your nutrition and personal training needs. Table to Mat offers virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. You can email Table to Mat directly through the website tabletomat.com. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com. You can call Table to Mat 240-388-2206. Perhaps the Nats should call Table to Mat with what's happening with the team right now. But I tell you what, you are tuned into a very special episode of the Nats Chat podcast. This is episode 1,000 of this podcast. Yes, 1,000 episodes. We have been allowed to exist for 1,000 episodes. The first episode of this podcast came out in February 2021. Here we are 5.5 years later, 1,000 episodes. It has been a pleasure doing this podcast. We are so thankful for all of you who listen to this podcast. We hope to one day do this podcast with the Nats being a great team, as the lifespan of this podcast, pretty amazingly actually, has coincided precisely with the Nats' 6-season rebuild. But it still has been a treat to do this podcast. We thank the creator, owner, and executive producer of the podcast, Tim Shovers. Understand this podcast is his baby. This was his idea. He runs the podcast. He deserves the credit. But Mark, it has been awesome doing this show with you. I say to you and to Tim and to everyone, happy 1,000 episodes. And I tell you what, man, there is something appropriate about episode 1,000 being about a 13-1 Nats loss to the lowly Colorado Rockies. That seems fitting, given the nature of Nats baseball over the life of this podcast.
As much as I was hoping like a month ago that this episode would involve a pennant race for the first time since we launched in 2021, you're right, it maybe is more fitting that this is what it is, getting absolutely humiliated by the Rockies, a recurring theme for this team in recent years, by the way. You might remember a homestand last year against the Rockies and the Marlins, who are next here in town, that had some major ramifications for the organization. I don't think this one's going to have quite those same results. But in spite of all the losses, and I asked Tim to see if we can figure out, I don't know if he figured out the number, of the 1,000 episodes, how many have we done with the team owning a winning record? Most of the first half of this year, yes. Prior to that, only a handful of them. They certainly don't have it now. There's no reason to think they will have it at the end of the season. And yet, in spite of all the losing, and I've mentioned this before on and off the air to you guys, it has been such a pleasure doing this. I still look forward to doing it every single night, both because of you and Tim, and especially because of our audience, which has been so loyal, no matter the results. It is truly a testament to this fan base and what they care about, and the fact that they just appreciate good conversation about this team that they love so much. I can't thank all of you out there enough for that. Let's just hope that by the time we get to, I was going to say episode 2000, let's do it sooner than that. Let's get to like episode 1150, how about? And we're talking about something a lot more positive than we're talking about tonight.
That would be nice. Would love to have that happen. But, I actually think it says a lot about the podcast that the team has been this bad. I mean, we would have never anticipated the team doing this poorly over 6 seasons. And yet we have been able to last for 6 seasons because of the great fan base in the Washington, D.C. area. And that's baseball, even with the team in the state that it is in, is very much alive and well. Now, Tim has asked that I ask, for those of you listening, to email a particular moment from the podcast that stands out. So if you would like to do that, you certainly can. The email address is natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You certainly can just email any thoughts on the podcast as well. But yes, happy 1,000 episodes, and let us hope that this episode goes a bit better than this Nats game at Nationals Park on Wednesday evening went for the Nats. Before we get to the particulars of the game, Blake Butera, for the first time as Nats manager, calling out the effort of his ball club.
We got to come out expecting and playing our butts off every single night. I felt like we were short tonight.
Did so during his post-game press conference on Wednesday night. What did you make of Blake Butera doing that?
I thought it was deserved, frankly. And I think, he didn't do a lot as far as specifics, but I think it was pretty clear he's talking about his position players. The pitching staff is trying their best. They've got what they've got there. And really, other than tonight, the pitching staff has actually been better here in recent weeks, and has kind of given them a chance. Offensively, we know they are depleted in terms of the personnel right now, and Butera doesn't fault them for that. But he has said on multiple occasions over the last month, as things have gone downhill, he has said, it would be one thing if we were losing and the effort wasn't there, but I have not seen that. And so he was still complimentary of everybody for doing their best under some trying circumstances. And for whatever reason, this game, it was not there. And you saw it. It was a lifeless performance. You saw several instances of guys not really running hard on the bases. We can talk about a couple of specific instances, maybe involving Andres Chaparro in particular. You saw, and I get the game's a blowout, but you saw them just swinging at whatever was thrown up there late in the game. It seemed like they were just trying to get this one over with. I get it. It's human nature. It's been a long, frustrating month. But I think we've learned about Blake Butera that above all else, he cares. And he wants his team to take on his personality, which is we're giving it all we've got every time we're out there on the field. And really, for the first time tonight, he felt like that was not the case. And I think it was justified on his part to call that out.
I think one of the hardest things in sports is to differentiate between bad performance and bad effort. And so often you'll see people talk about bad effort when in reality, it may just be that the team isn't good. And so the performance just wasn't good, but it's not necessarily for lack of effort. When the manager makes it a point to bring something like that up, and this is not something he has done previously, I think you take it seriously. Like clearly Blake Butera was seeing things that were troubling to him. And you mentioned Andres Chaparro. So he actually had a really good game, and he actually did so while playing third base. All this talk about CJ Abrams and when he might finally play second base. By the way, he still hasn't done that. We'll get to his situation shortly. But Chaparro Chaparro for this game was the Nats' starting third baseman and number 5 batter. First time that Chaparro has started at third base in an MLB regular season game. Has played third base a little bit, but had not started a game. 3 for 4, solo homer, a double, and a single. The homer was great. A 1-run second for the Nats. Chaparro, a leadoff full-count homer to left field for a 1-0 Nats lead to conclude a 9-pitch plate appearance in which he was down in the count at 1.02. But also with Chaparro, bottom of the fourth, a 2-out first-pitch single into left field. And then he on a 2-out double by Jose Tena on a fly ball that got lost in the sky in center field, was slowly jogging, and he was jogging so slowly that he only advanced to third base. And that was so bad. That was such a bad look. The Nats got blown out, so it's not like that's a moment that, is going to stick with you in perpetuity, right? But that really was not a good look for Chaparro. And in the moment, you maybe don't notice how he's running. You watch the replay of that play. I mean, he was not moving with any kind of oomph, with any kind of urgency. And I would imagine that moment stuck in the mind of Blake Butera.
Yeah, I don't know if he scores or not, but we weren't going 100%. Shouldn't have been a close play at second either.
Yes, it absolutely did. That's probably it, moment number 1 in terms of lack of effort that was visible in this game. Now, I get it. That ball is caught not just 99 times out of 100, but like 999 times out of 1,000. That ball is caught and the inning is over. So I understand why the inclination is to just jog it out, wait for it to be caught, turn around and go back to the dugout. But when there are 2 outs, you never know what might happen. And there is no penalty for just continuing to run. Doesn't have to be, Nasim Nunez speed, but just at a standard speed of running the bases as if the ball is live, because it is. And if he does that because it did fall to the ground, he probably scores. Now, Butera also mentioned on the back end of that play, Jose Tena, who's the hitter, also wasn't running hard. Now, I don't know if that's because he saw Chaparro in front of him or he also just assumed it was going to be caught. Now, he made it to second, but there was actually a play at second, and it was a lot closer than it ever should have been under the circumstances. And so that kind of encapsulated the night, I think, for them. Yes, it's a blowout game. At that time, it's 1-0. They're ahead. A chance to add to it. I know it's a gift of a play that you're never expecting to happen, but that's the point. You always have to assume that anything can happen. There's no penalty for running hard with 2 outs. You can't be backpicked or thrown out or doubled up or anything like that. There's no excuse. Just run hard because you never know what might happen. And that was the one that stood out the most. I think Chaparro later in the game had a double in the 9th inning and was almost thrown out at second base on a play that never should have been close either. As I said, some quick at-bats from other guys during the game. And then Butera also went out of his way to mention on the Rockies side of things, Cole Carrig, the number 2 hitter in the 7th inning, grounds out to second, but he ran hard and almost beat it out on what's kind of a routine play.
You look at Cole Carrig gets a ground ball to second base and he's absolutely flying down the line. Like that's how you play baseball. And they did that tonight. I didn't see the same from us.
That was the kind of thing that stood out to the opposing manager. Hey, they're playing hard. Why aren't we doing the same thing? That's a bad look, obviously, whether you're in a long losing streak or not. And as he said, the outcome of the game was not determined by their lack of effort. They're still going to lose this game probably by a lot regardless, but he did not want to see that kind of performance from them where it looked like they were just going through the motions for good parts of that game.
No, and it's a bad reflection on him when something like this happens. Now, it's one game, so, if 1 out of 162 is bad in terms of effort, but the other 161 are good, I think you could live with that. But what you want to do, if you're Blake Butera, right, is nip this in the bud. This team is not doing well. This season is sliding down quickly, and, things could get ugly over the final few weeks. You don't want that. It's not a good look for you. It's not a good look for the organization. I do wonder with Chaparro, is he maybe starting to feel himself a little bit? He's doing well. Andres Chaparro now has an OPS of 906 over 154 plate appearances at the major league level in this regular season. But, I would say about Chaparro, as I have said about this team as a whole, there is nobody on this team who has earned the right to coast, okay? Like, these are all a bunch of guys who still have a lot to prove at the major league level. So regardless of the score, regardless of the record, like, if you need to be motivated, play for yourself, okay? Play for your career, to be perfectly blunt, and think of it in those terms. The Nats now have scored a total this is remarkable, of 16 runs over the team's last 10 losses. I mean, let that sink in. 1 run in this game, 7 hits, no walks, 0 for 4 with runners in scoring position. 4 of the 7 hits were extra base hits as the Nats had a home run, a triple, and 2 doubles. But consider this. The Rocky starting pitcher was a guy named Tanner Gordon. Tanner Gordon came into this game with an ERA of 5.75 over 18 games, including 6 starts. And yet Tanner Gordon in this game allowed 1 run in 7 innings with 5 strikeouts versus no walks. The Nats made Tanner Gordon with his 5.75 ERA look like a Cy Young Award candidate. And this is where we are right now with this Nats offense.
This is sports broadcaster Ben Raby and a longtime listener to the Nats Chat podcast. A while back, I was in the market for a personal trainers, and my ears perked up last season when I heard an ad from show sponsor Table to Mat. Proving the power of advertising, I reached out and eventually began a training program with Chad, and boy, am I ever glad I did. Chad will work with you to devise a personal program. The communication, the flexible scheduling, and the setup at his home gym are all great. I legitimately bounced around trainers and gym programs for years, and I've never had a more productive and enjoyable experience than working with Chad. Do what I did. Visit him online at tabletomat.com. That's table, the number 2, and mat, M-A-T, tabletomat.com. Reach out to Chad. Hear the terrific workout programs he can build for you. Plus, like you, he's a huge Nats fan.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
3-2 pitch on the way. Chaparro launches one to deep left. This one over McCarthy's head toward the wall, and it's gone! A line drive, home run to left for third baseman Andres Chaparro. And the Nationals lead it 1-0. That's number 9 for Chaparro. A laser beam of a line drive. I think McCarthy went back thinking he might have a play. It just sailed over his head and over the wall.
Now, I mentioned C.J. Abrams, so he was to be the Nats starting shortstop and number 1 batter. Yes, he was going to be back at shortstop, but the Nats altered the lineup to where he was the starting DH and number 1 batter, went 0 for 4 in this, his 3rd game back from a sprained left ankle, but pretty clearly that ankle still is not right for the Nats to do what they did and move him from shortstop to DH prior to the game.
Correct. And let's start this by acknowledging that he is not 100% healthy yet. And I know there's been a lot of conspiracy theories out there and wondering if this is Abrams being reluctant to make the move to second base and stalling and making it seem like he's hurt worse than he is. He legitimately got hurt on that play. And even when you watched him run the bases the previous couple nights as the DH, you could see that it wasn't quite right. He was running in a straight line pretty well when he stole a few bases. He was not making the turns well. He was having trouble slowing down after, running down the first base line, things like that. So he is not 100% yet. Now, they had not announced the lineup when Blake Butera held his pregame press conference with us. And he said, it was actually our Tim Shovers who asked him the question, will he start getting work at second base or not?
Will CJ do any work at second base pregame today?
We're going to find out if he can play shortstop, so we're not going to put him at second if we're trying to see if he can play short tonight.
Still to be determined for the lineup tonight.
He's in the lineup at shortstop, unless ground balls don't go well today.
So then you heard me follow up by, asking whether he was playing shortstop that night because we didn't know yet. And Butera's answer was, well, yeah, he's playing shortstop, but it was contingent upon him being able to get through the pregame drills with no issues. So they may have made a mistake in just publicly putting out that first lineup before they actually knew. But somewhere in that 3 to 4 o'clock hour, he went out there to try to work at shortstop and it didn't go the way they wanted it to. And so they said, okay, we're going to scrap this. You're just going to DH. for the night. So I don't find fault with any of that other than maybe they shouldn't have just put out the lineup, whether it was inadvertent or not. They shouldn't have put that out there until they absolutely knew if he was going to be able to play or not. The larger question here is, what does this mean as far as the whole second base move is concerned? And you could tell from Butera's answer to Tim's question that second base is not first and foremost on their mind right now. And there's maybe some frustration in Butera's mind about that.
We're going to find out if he can play shortstop, so we're not going to put him at second if we're trying to see if he can play short tonight.
Essentially saying we're not even going to consider moving him to second until we know he's good enough to play short again, and he's not yet. And so this thing is going to keep dragging on. There's a lot of frustration over how this has all gone down. Some of it's been out of their control. There are things they couldn't do anything about, such as the injury. But there are aspects of this, of course, that they probably wish they'd handled a little differently. And now it has left them here, as you love to keep pointing out the number of days. We are up to 12 days since that was announced, and he's nowhere closer to playing second base, it appears, than he was at the time.
August 14th was when the declaration was made that the Nats were moving C.J. Abrams to being primarily a second baseman. I think the other thing to wonder about is, did the Nats err in not putting him on the 10-day injured list? Should they have just put him on the 10-day IL when this first happened, let him recover, and then he comes back fully healthy, and you can go 100 miles forward with him playing second base? Instead, now you're doing this thing where he's recovering while playing, which is a difficult thing for any athlete to do. And so you're reluctant to make him, add further baggage to what he's dealing with by having him go to a new position. There's still enough time in the season for him to play some second base. If he's healthy in another week or two, you're still can have multiple weeks of him playing second base. So I don't think this is a lost cause, this move to second base. But yeah, this is taking forever. And, the timing of this injury just could not be worse. But I do wonder if part of the frustration is, hey, this guy should be on the 10-day IL right now, instead of us trying to mend him while playing, and also while in the back of our minds having this move to second base.
And in theory, the advantage, had they just done that from the get-go, is even if he was feeling good after 5-6 days, you've just bought yourself several days of free workouts for him, where you could put him at second base before a game and have him just learn and get comfortable at the position, knowing he wouldn't actually have to play it in a game because he wasn't on the active roster. And maybe at the end of all that, you activate him and he's good to go at the new position. So yeah, in hindsight, absolutely, that's something. Now, I can understand why they didn't make that move for two reasons. Number one, Abrams is telling them, and their doctors are looking at him and saying, this is a couple of days. It's not the full 10 days. That he should be able to play. Number two, look, the offense is bad right now, but we saw how bad it was without him, especially in the Texas and Miami series. I am sure there was significant motivation on everyone's part to say, can we just get him in the lineup to DH? I get he's not 100%, but if he can hit, we need him desperately right now. And so I'm sure that was part of the equation as well that prompted them to do it after 4 games and not have to sacrifice 10 games by putting him on the IL.
Another offensive bright spot for the Nats in this game was Dylan Cruz. He was a Nats starting right fielder and number 3 batter, 2 for 4 with a triple and a single. Cruz in the bottom of the first had a 2-out opposite field triple to the right field corner. But yeah, 1 run for the Nats in a game in which they allowed 13. So the Nats pitching in this 13-1 loss to the Rockies at Nationals Park on Wednesday evening. We had a bullpen game, and the results were not good. Matt Waldron was the Nats starting pitcher, and he did do well. He in his Nats debut tossed 2 scoreless innings. He threw 28 pitches, 21 strikes versus just 7 balls. 12 of the pitches knuckleballs per StatCast. As we talked about with Waldron, he is not an all-of-the-time knuckleballer. He is a part-time knuckleballer, but he did well in this game. The Nats this past Saturday afternoon announced having claimed Waldron off waivers from the Toronto Blue Jays. So there's a lot to get to with the pitching. I'll just kind of stop and start with the various pitchers who we hit on. So Waldron has been both a starter and a reliever. He started this game, but only went 2 innings. His role with the Nats will be a reliever or not necessarily?
Still to be determined. He has been a starter in the past, mostly in San Diego. In the last month or so when he was with the Blue Jays, they had him out of the bullpen. And so the feeling was they weren't just going to throw him out there as a true starter yet, get him for a few innings, and then move on to Will Dion, who I think they felt like was more stretched out at this point to be able to do that. Now, in Waldron's case, I don't know if they really view this as more than we just need an arm right now and here's a stopgap that can help us get through this rough stretch, or if they think there's a chance of something. He looked all right out there. I know they're intrigued just by the idea that he does something different than a lot of other pitchers do. We've seen they do seem to prioritize like different looks from their pitching staff, a lot of lefties with different kind of arm slots and things. Well, here's a righty who throws a knuckleball. It wasn't a ton of them, but it was a higher percentage than he had been throwing them earlier this year. He was at like 25% earlier in the year, and at this game, I think it was about 40. So they did mention beforehand that they think that they'd like him to throw a little bit more of it, but I'm not really sure they know what the grand plan is with him. It's more like let's put him out there, let's see how it does. If it's promising enough, we'll keep him around and figure out where to go next with it. I would guess that there was enough here to say, let's give it another shot at some point and see how it goes. I wouldn't count on huge things from him, but they are desperate for any kind of pitching right now. They don't have 5 starting pitchers at the moment. I think we can not acknowledge that. And so if this is somebody who can give you multiple innings with a different look, whether it's for a bullpen game or other situations, why not give it a shot and see what you have at least a few times?
Well, you mentioned Will Dion. He had been doing so well for the Nats. He did not do well in this game. 4 runs, 2 2/3 innings. Dion, in the top of the 5th, allowed 4 runs as he issued a leadoff walk of Connor Norby, gave up a 2-run homer by Troy Johnston to right field for a 2-1 Rockies lead, gave up a 1-out first pitch bunt single by Jake McCarthy to the right side of the infield on a play in which Dion was late getting to first base, and gave up a 1-out 2-run homer by Cole Carrig to left field for a 4-1 Rockies lead, despite Dion having had Carrig down in the count at 1.12. Very disappointing outing for Will Dion. Then came the MLB regular season debut of Luis Perales, and the debut did not go well. He allowed 4 runs in 2 innings, 3 swinging strikeouts versus 3 walks. Perales gave up 4 hits, including a 2-out grand slam by Connor Norby to left center field in the top of the 7th to put the Rockies up 8-1. Perales in this debut, 53 pitches, a mere 27 strikes versus 26 balls. Now, the stuff is good. He, per StatCast, had an average four-seam fastball velocity of 99.6 miles per hour over 17 four-seam fastballs. But location can be an issue, and as mentioned, he gave up a grand slam. The Nats on Wednesday afternoon announced having recalled Perales from AAA Rochester. So we had talked about him a bit. He is the Nats' number 12 overall prospect per MLB Pipeline. As we had discussed, the Nats, interestingly, have moved him from being a starting pitcher to being a relief pitcher, at least for now. In this moment in which the Nats are lacking in starting pitching options, why exactly have the Nats moved Perales from being a starter to being a reliever? Put aside how the debut went, not well, I get that. But if you're so desperate for starting pitching, and this guy is one of your better starting pitching prospects, why did they move him to being a reliever at Rochester in recent weeks and now have him as a reliever at the major league level?
So 2 reasons I believe that this was the case. The first, we have to remember this didn't just happen in the last week. It's been several weeks, and he's not the only one. Rochester made a calculated decision to essentially just go with relievers here for much of the last month, instead of having traditional starters. And some of that was what they had available to them, but it was also at that time when the team was still kind of in it around the turn of the month from July to August, the feeling was they needed bullpen help. And so if there are some young pitchers at AAA, even if they're starters, we might be able to use them as relievers down the stretch this year. So let's start prepping them for that possibility. And so for several weeks, Perales and others were doing that. Now, what happened in the interim is that the team collapsed. They traded Foster Griffin. They DFA'd Zach Littell and Miles Michaelis. And all of a sudden, the need is for starters, not for relievers. And so it kind of caught them in a bind there. So that's part of it. The second part, and I do think this is important to note, is that Perales only came back late last season from Tommy John surgery. So this is his first full season back. And they do have to monitor his workload. And that's one of the reasons that they started using him as a reliever. And it's why I think they'll probably continue to do that for the rest of this season. That doesn't mean in the long run they might not still view him as a starter. It may come next spring. They may have him stretched out and competing for a spot in the rotation. But for now, the combination of what they had already set in motion in Rochester over the last several weeks and the fact that they are trying to monitor and limit in some way how much he throws this year before the end of the season, coming back from injury. That's why he's in this spot. And that's why, even though there's probably more of a need at the moment for another starter, they're not going to use him in that way at the moment.
Yeah, well, be interesting to see what role he has. Of course, it will be interesting to see how he does. And, with Luis Perales at this point, it's hard to talk about him and not discuss how the Nats got him. This past December 15th, the Nats traded starting pitching prospect Jake Bennett to the Boston Red Sox for Perales. And as I know, many of you know, Jake Bennett doing quite well for Boston. Bennett at the major league level in this regular season, 15 games, all starts, ERA of 3.49, whip of 1.17. A, would he be doing this for the Nats if he was still with the Nats? B, if he was doing this for the Nats, how different might this Nats season be? If you are president of baseball operations, Paul Taboni, do you wish you could undo this trade? I mean, it's too early to judge Perales, but, man, it has been hard to ignore what Jake Bennett has been doing. Al Galdi here to tell you about Window Nation. But before that, the Window Nation look into the future.
The 1-0. Swinging a blast deep to left center field. Back goes Penyango toward the triangle. It is out of here. Hayden Wallace has tied the game at 1 with a long shot to left center field.
For replacement windows and doors without the hassle, just look up Window Nation. Window Nation is the real deal. Homeowners across the country love the one-day installation process, especially since Window Nation installers leave your home cleaner than when they started. And this month, you can get 50% off all window styles, plus 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 2 years. That's a lot of savings on top of quality windows and doors. 866-90NATION or windownation.com, and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Window Nation, the real deal when it comes to replacement windows and doors. 866-90NATION, windownation.com, and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast.
Here's the set. And the 0-1. Swing a long drive, left center field. Forget about it. That one's going to clear the Rockies bullpen. They land about 5 rows deep in section 102. And the Rockies hit double digits. They lead 10-1. The All-Star Hunter Goodman with his 36th home run of the season. What a season he has had.
Also, with Nats pitching on Wednesday evening, Clayton Beeter retired the only batter he faced. Orlando Revolta had a really bad outing. He officially allowed 4 runs in 2/3 of an inning. He and the Rockies' 5-run 8th gave up a 1-out, 2-run homer by Hunter Goodman to left field for a 10-1 Rockies lead. The homer went a projected 435 feet per Statcast. And then we had the gift that is a position player pitching, third baseman / second baseman, Jorbit Bibas. He officially allowed 1 run in 1 1/3 innings, but he and the Rockies' 5-run 8th allowed 3 inherited runners to score in giving up 2 singles and issuing 2 hit by pitches. A really ugly game. Nats pitchers in this game combined to allow 13 runs in 9 innings, 15 hits, 8 walks, 2 hit by pitches. Yes, some of this was Jorbit Bibas, but a lot of this was not Jorbit Bibas. And man, we have had some really mixed results with the bullpen game approach. Some of these games have gone quite well, but when these games have gone ugly, like the one at the Mets and now this one against the Rockies, these bullpen games can get really ugly.
And as we've discussed, the danger of them is you're asking for a lot of guys to be on the same night, and sometimes all it takes is for one of them to be off, and that throws the whole plan out of whack, and it can turn a game ugly. Now, if you actually look at who they used in this game, okay, Waldron is new and Perales is new, but Dion had been one of their better pitchers here in a while. Beeter and Revolta have been their 2 best relievers this season. I know that's a low bar, but they have been that. And the fact that Dion and Revolta in particular were so bad is a lot of the reason that this game went the way that it did, and that they got to a point where they felt like they had to put Vivas out there, not just for one inning, by the way, multiple innings of the position player closing out a game. That, it's really bad when it comes to that. So it is the danger of the bullpen game. If you don't have a good bullpen to begin with, and you're asking 5-6 guys to all be on a given night to give you a chance to win, that's a tough ask. I understand you can only work with what you have, and what they have right now may not be that great, but you saw the perils of it in this game, and I wonder how they're going to proceed with this moving forward. They're going to have another game 5 starts from now in which they have to find a 5th starter or run back the same thing again. Would they have Dion start that game? Would they have Waldron start that game? I don't think they're going to have Perales start it. I think there's some real questions about how they're going to get through this last month of the season from a pitching standpoint, because they do not have 5 starters right now.
The other thing, too, is the schedule is unrelenting in terms of off days. The Nats have not had an off day, it feels like, in forever. Don't have another scheduled off day until Thursday, September 3rd. And this is something we have not talked about. The Nats have not had a single rainout in this regular season. Now, the Nats have had plenty of rain delays. They have had many rain delays. We have come to know those quite well. But the Nats have not had a single rainout. Every game has been played on the day on which that game was scheduled to be played. And so, there hasn't been like a break here of, an unanticipated off day. Or like I said, lately, you haven't had even a scheduled off day. Now, that's going to change. You're going to, in the month of September, the Nats have an off day on every Thursday in the month. So things are going to ease up a little bit. But in the meantime, this is one of these stretches. It's 16 games in 16 days in which you don't have a scheduled off day. And so, there is sort of that pressure of you've got to continually figure out pitching. And a game in which you give up 13 runs only further complicates things.
You have no way of knowing this because you can't see inside Nationals Park. But as we record this, the tarp is covering the infield because there's a chance it's going to rain overnight. I don't know if it's going to affect the status of Thursday's game, but that was quite interesting of you to bring that fact up. I hadn't even considered the fact that they have not had a rainout yet this year. Maybe we'll get one Thursday. I'm going to guess probably not. And the problem with that is it's the last game they play the Rockies. So they would wait that one out as long as they have to, lest they only play 161 games this year, which is something that Major League Baseball does not like to do. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But yeah, the tarp's actually on the field right now. How about that?
Well, hopefully that game happens as scheduled and on time, because that is a Thursday afternoon game at 1:05, and we're big fans of those. Game 4 for the Nats against the Rockies at Nationals Park. The Nats have listed Jake Irvin as their probable starting pitcher for the game. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. And as mentioned earlier, you can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. This installment of Nats Chat, what is episode 1000 of the Nats Chat Podcast, brought to us by a great sponsor, Table to Mat. You can count on Table to Mat for all of your nutrition and personal training needs. Table to Mat offers virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. You can email Table to Mat directly through the website tabletomat.com. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com. You can call Table to Mat 240-388-2206. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Rogers 2-2. Swinging a fly ball into right field, carrying well toward the gap. Martin's back. He's at the fence. It's gone! 20-game hitting streak. Home run number 28 for Lipscomb. And the Wings on the scoreboard emphatically now in the 5th. They're trailing by a run, 2-1 Buffalo.